Hello, everyone. And today I wanted to talk about how your emotions change your reality, how they just just being in a certain emotion, your whole reality and the way that you filter it um, is completely changed. So access to information that may be privy to you in different emotional states or not, you have no access to. Um, and I'm talking specifically in um, in more of the negative emotional states that you're in, that you just don't have access to certain information that you would in a more positive state. In a more positive state, you have like a wider access to information. There seems to be a recognition that you can look at a situation in a negative way if you chose to, but why would you choose to do that? Because in looking at your reality in that way, then you will behave in that way and basically structure your reality to make that true. Whereas, again, it being in a positive state, you realize that's a possibility, but you decide to choose a more positive path, and then your reality reflects that. Whereas when you're in a negative state, an emotional state, you're much more constricted and you don't have access to that there even is a positive uh, positive possibility out there in whatever situation that you're dealing with. And even if you do have a vague sense that there may be a positive outlook on how you can view this situation, you're usually tricked into thinking that for some reason that is not a viable option. It's ridiculous to choose that because it's not viable. So it's almost like tricking you into staying in the reality that you're in, staying in that emotional, structured emotion. And this is why it's very important to be able to step out of thinking, because these emotional states have a structure to them that wants to kind of keep it there. And if you were to have any choice in how you choose to react to that, you have to be able to, at some point, be able to step out of your thinking and be able to recognize what state you're in. Again, how can you have a choice if you don't even know that you're in a certain emotional state until it's kind of too late, till something happens? Again, in the positive states, it doesn't really much matter because you're in a positive state. You're reacting to your environment in a positive way. So everything that's going to come back to you is typically going to be positive until you step into a certain belief that structures you into a different emotional state, a more negative one. And then if you don't recognize that, there'll be an automatic reaction. It'll just be a reaction. You won't have any choice over the matter at all. It's just automatically reacting in that structure of emotion. So very important to be able to recognize this. Um, the more that you can stay present and step out of your thinking, the more that it becomes very obvious when all of a sudden your whole thinking will start to change and you'll feel it in your whole body as the emotion of this negativity starts. And you can actually, one of the questions that I typically ask myself is well, I don't even really consciously ask myself. I just kind of look at something and say, how how am I feeling about this? You know, what does it feel like? And if it feels kind of negative, or there's some type of negative feeling over something that may be innate, in some type of object that really has no real, um, that has no emotional tie to me, a relatively neutral object. How does this feel to me? And a lot of times, if there's, that'll help me to determine where my base um, emotion is. Where am I at? And where are, so that'll determine where my thoughts are ranging. There'll be a certain range that will not vary that far off of that until I move out of that phase. Um, so, um, but I'll be able to recognize that, and so then that triggers. Again, if there's kind of a negative feeling towards it, a uh, I don't a strange sensation of feeling. I don't. I want to say there's no really good way of describing it, but kind of like just a yucky feeling. It's just a terrible feeling. Um, when when you feel that, you could recognize, okay, I'm in a negative pattern. Something may have triggered it to get me there. And I obviously, if I would have been able to be conscious enough at the time, I wouldn't even have gotten myself in that. But now that I'm here, I can wake up. And so, very important at that point to be very present, because at that point, if you're present, you're at the same level as your thinking. I mean, your thinking can't it it exists only in future and past, and you only really get in trouble if you think if you're kind of living in your mind, if you're living the emotion, if you're, then, and you believe you are the emotion. Now you're stuck in time, and there's nothing you can do. But if you recognize that you're in the emotion, you're already a step out of it, and you are actually sitting there live watching the thinking and watching your reality, and you can be that other perspective to be able to tell whether or not this is something that you would choose um, to believe in, or if it's something that you would choose to act in. Is this, whatever situation that it is, would you continue to choose to view it in that way, in a negative way? Because you will probably be able to tell that there's no reason to, especially if you're very present and have stepped out of thinking. You'll be able to recognize that, okay, I am in an emotional energy field. This is where my thinking is. And it has filtered my reality so that I'm looking at it through the past. I'm looking at it how I used to look at it. And I don't need to view this in this way. There's no constructive reasoning why I would consciously choose to view reality in this way, because all it's doing is making me feel terrible. And so um, uh, I just wanted to kind of just relay to anybody that is trying to go on their spiritual journey that these things do happen. It's a good uh, um, it's a good recognition, because how else are you going to be able to wake up unless you realize that you are in these patterns of behavior? And as you step out of these patterns of behavior, there isn't a conscious you continuing it. So all you're doing is watching the momentum kind of die down until, and when that dies down, you can actually view reality in the way that you would choose to. But there may be some time where that energy is still there, and it may make you feel terrible. But very important not to give up, not to you know believe that that's the way it's always going to be. The only way you can make any changes in your thinking is by stepping out of it and recognizing where you are and being able to make those conscious choices to view things in a different way. And it doesn't really need to be something that you do so much, it's just something that you recognize. It's like awareness, just recognizing, aha, I am looking at it in this way and I don't need to. And that's really all that needs to be there. And and again, just tricks to stay present during that while you're in those states, and because that energy is really going to want to trick you into buying into it again. It wants to keep you in that reality. That energy doesn't really want to die off in you. So um, it's very important at that point to look at it as just energy. It's just energy. It's actually your own energy. And and the only way you can transmute it is to just kind of allow it to be. So it will feel terrible. It's going to feel yucky. You're going to want it to go away. You don't really want to be in it, but you really do need to just be there and just realize, if there's one mantra you can always kind of tell yourself, which will always be true, is that this too shall pass. So recognize it, understand you're in there, but um, just allow it to be. Recognize you don't need to choose um, that path. There's um, just stay quiet. I guess as Muji would say, just stay quiet. Stay quiet. Um, allow it to that energy to just fizzle out, and then the real you can just shine through. Thank you everyone for watching. Take care.